If you don't like living with us, you're free to leave, Jennifer said, standing in my kitchen like she owned the place. 10 minutes later, she was the one screaming for the police, claiming I'd lost my mind. What she didn't expect was that I'd been recording our entire conversation. If you're watching this, hit subscribe and tell me where you're tuning in from. Let me explain how I ended up packing my daughter-in-law's belongings while she called 911 on me. It all started 8 months ago when my son Daniel lost his job at the accounting firm. Just temporarily, Mom, he'd said, showing up at my door with Jennifer and 2 suitcases. Until I get back on my feet. I'm Margaret Walsh, 67 years old, and apparently naive enough to think temporarily still meant what it used to. My husband Robert left me this beautiful 4-bedroom house in Maple Heights when he passed 2 years ago, along with the comfortable retirement I earned teaching high school English for 40 years. What I didn't realize was that I had just invited 2 parasites into my home. Mom, you're being ridiculous. Daniel said that Tuesday morning when I suggested maybe 8 months was long enough for a temporary stay. Jennifer and I contribute to this household. Contribute. That's rich. They'd paid exactly 0 toward rent, utilities, or groceries since moving in. Jennifer worked part-time at a salon and spent most of her income on designer coffee and online shopping. Daniel was supposedly job hunting, though his hunting grounds seemed to be limited to my couch and my refrigerator. We do the dishes sometimes, Jennifer added, not even looking up from her phone as she scrolled through photos from their Cancun vacation, the one they'd taken with my credit card without asking. How generous of you, I said. Even I could hear the acid in my voice. That's when Jennifer finally looked up, her eyes cold as winter. Margaret, if you don't like living with us, you're free to leave anytime. The audacity took my breath away. In my own house, my own kitchen, standing next to the refrigerator I'd bought and paid for, eating food purchased with my pension. Excuse me? I said quietly. You heard me. Nobody's forcing you to stay here if we're such a burden. Daniel shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. My own son, watching his wife try to kick his mother out of her own home. Something snapped inside me. The old Margaret would have apologized, maybe even started packing her own bags. But this Margaret had been pushed too far. You know what, Jennifer? You're absolutely right. I walked upstairs to the guest room they'd been staying in and pulled their biggest suitcase from the closet. Jennifer followed, probably expecting me to start folding my clothes into it. Instead, I began tossing her things inside her expensive workout clothes that had never seen a gym, the jewelry she'd bought with money they didn't have, the designer handbags cluttering my dresser. What are you doing? She shrieked. Packing, I said calmly, adding Daniel's gaming equipment to the pile. Isn't this what you wanted? Not our stuff, your stuff? I paused, holding one of her ridiculously overpriced sweaters. Oh, honey, I'm not the one who needs to leave. This is my house. My name is on the deed. Her face went white, then red, then purple. She pulled out her phone and started dialing frantically. Yes, I need police and an ambulance, she said, her voice suddenly shaky and tearful. My mother-in-law is having some kind of breakdown. She's acting completely erratic and I'm scared for everyone's safety. She's threatening us and packing our belongings. I think she might be having a psychotic episode, mother-in-law. Since when was I family? I kept packing, amazed at how calm I felt. Let her call whoever she wanted. This was still my house. What I didn't know was that Jennifer had been planning this moment for months. 7 minutes after her dramatic phone call, my doorbell rang. Through the window, I saw 2 police officers and a paramedic standing on my porch. Behind them was a black sedan I didn't recognize, Mrs. Walsh. The older officer was polite but cautious. We received a call about a disturbance. Please, come in, I said, stepping aside, though I wasn't sure what disturbance they were referring to. Jennifer appeared at the top of the stairs, her face streaked with what looked like genuine tears. Officers, thank God you're here, she said. She just started throwing our things around, shouting about how we don't belong here. I've never seen her like this. The younger officer looked back and forth between us. Ma'am, is this your residence? Yes, it is. I've lived here for 32 years. And you, miss? I'm Jennifer Walsh, Daniel's wife. Daniel is Margaret's son. We've been staying here to help take care of her since her husband passed. Help take care of me? I almost laughed. The woman who couldn't remember to flush the toilet was taking care of me. Mrs. Walsh, the older officer said gently. Your daughter-in-law says you were packing their belongings and asking them to leave. Can you tell us what happened? Certainly, I said. Jennifer told me that if I didn't like living with them, I was free to leave. Since this is my house, I suggested they might be the ones who should leave instead. The paramedic stepped forward. He was young, probably fresh out of training. Mrs. Walsh, I'm going to ask you a few questions just to make sure you're feeling okay. Can you tell me what day it is? Tuesday, October 15th. It's 2:30 in the afternoon, and I'm feeling perfectly fine, thank you. Do you know who the president is? I rattled off the current political information, my address, my social security number, and even recited the opening lines of Hamlet for good measure. The paramedic looked confused. She seems completely lucid, he said to the officers. That's when the man from the black sedan appeared. He was tall, silver-haired, and wore an expensive suit that screamed private practice. Officers. I'm Dr. Bradley Cooper. I'm a psychiatrist, and Mrs. Walsh has been one of my patients. I stared at him. I beg your pardon. I've never seen you before in my life, Margaret. Dr. Cooper said in that condescending tone medical professionals often use on difficult elderly patients. You came to see me last month about your memory issues and paranoid thoughts about your family. That's impossible. I don't have memory issues, and I certainly don't have paranoid thoughts. Jennifer slowly descended the stairs, her tears flowing freely now. Mom, you don't remember? You've been so confused lately. Last week, you accused Daniel and me of stealing your credit cards. Because you did steal my credit cards. The words came out louder than I intended, and I saw the officers exchange glances. Dr. Cooper nodded sagely. This kind of angry denial is very common with dementia patients. They often accuse family members of theft or conspiracy. I do not have dementia, Mrs. Walsh. The older officer said carefully. Would you mind if we took a look around just to make sure everything's okay? Of course, I led them through my pristine house. The living room, where Jennifer's magazines were scattered across my coffee table. The kitchen, with their dirty dishes still sitting in the sink. My home office, where Daniel had been using my computer to play online poker. In the guest room, their belongings were scattered across the floor, the exact spot I had been packing them. To someone who didn't know the context, it might have looked like the actions of someone having a breakdown. Dr. Cooper examined the scene with theatrical concern. Margaret, can you explain why you were packing these items? Because Jennifer told me that if I didn't like living with them, I could leave. I was simply taking her advice and helping them pack, but these aren't your belongings to pack. He said gently, they're in my house. They've been here 8 months without paying rent. Jennifer sobbed louder. She's been getting more and more agitated about money. Yesterday, she accused us of not contributing. Even though we pay for groceries all the time, I wanted to ask her to produce a single receipt. But something in Dr. Cooper's eyes warned me that anything I said would be used as evidence of my deteriorating mental state. The realization hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't a spontaneous breakdown. This was planned. Mrs. Walsh, we'd like you to come with us to the hospital, Dr. Cooper said, his voice dripping with false compassion. Just for observation, a few tests to make sure you're okay. And if I refuse? I asked. The older officer interjected, we can't force you. But Dr. Cooper here has concerns about your mental state. I looked around my living room at the assembled cast of my breakdown, Jennifer clutching tissues, Daniel hovering uselessly to cops who clearly wanted to be anywhere else, a paramedic checking his watch, and a psychiatrist I'd never met claiming to be my doctor. You know what? I'll go to the hospital, but I want to call my attorney first, Margaret, Jennifer said quickly. You don't need an attorney. We're family. We just want you to get better, family, right? The same family that had been living in my house rent-free while telling me I could leave. If I didn't like it, I picked up my phone and dialed Margaret Chen, my lawyer who'd handled Robert's estate. She answered on the second ring. Margaret, it's Maggie Walsh. I need you to meet me at Maple Heights General. Apparently, I'm having a psychiatric evaluation. What? Maggie, what's going on? I'll explain when you get there. I hung up before anyone could object. Dr. Cooper frowned. Mrs. Walsh, involving lawyers at this stage might complicate things unnecessarily, doctor. Since I've never met you before and you're not actually my physician, I think having legal representation is perfectly reasonable. The younger cop looked confused. Wait, if she's never met you, how are you her doctor? Dr. Cooper's smooth forehead cracked slightly. Mrs. Walsh is clearly confused about our previous sessions. When exactly did these sessions take place? I asked sweetly. Patient confidentiality prevents me from though. You can discuss my supposed memory issues and paranoid thoughts in front of the police. But you can't tell me when I supposedly visited your office? Jennifer stepped forward quickly. Mom, you don't remember because of the confusion. That's why Dr. Cooper is here to help. Jennifer, in 30 years of marriage to your father-in-law, I never once had memory issues. I balanced our checkbook, managed my classroom of 30 teenagers, and could tell you every birthday and anniversary in the family. But somehow, in the 8 months since you moved in, I've developed sudden onset dementia? The older officer was starting to look skeptical. Dr. Cooper, do you have documentation of your previous treatment of Mrs. Walsh? The records are at my office, he said stiffly. Which office? I asked. What's your practice called? Where is it located? Another crack in the facade. I don't think this hostile interrogation is helpful for the patient's mental state. Hostile interrogation? I laughed. Officer, I'm asking a man who claims to be my doctor to provide basic information about his practice. If that's hostile, then I guess I really am losing my mind. Jennifer was looking nervous now. Glancing between Dr. Cooper and the police officers, can we just get her to the hospital? She clearly needs help. That's when Margaret Chen arrived. She swept through my front door like an avenging angel in a navy blue suit. Her briefcase in one hand and her phone in the other. Which one of you is Dr. Cooper? She asked without preamble. The silver-haired man stepped forward. I am, and you are? Margaret Chen, Mrs. Walsh's attorney. I just called the state medical board. Funny thing about Dr. Bradley Cooper, he had his license suspended 6 months ago. For participating in fraudulent psychiatric holds, the room went dead silent. That's impossible. Jennifer whispered. Double quotes. Oh. It's very possible. Dr. Cooper here has quite the reputation for helping families commit elderly relatives against their will usually. For a substantial fee, Dr. Cooper was already backing toward the door. There's been some misunderstanding. The only misunderstanding, Margaret Chen said coldly, is thinking you could run this scam in my client's house. As the fake doctor fled and the police officers started asking Jennifer very pointed questions, I realized this was just the beginning. The next morning, I sat in Margaret Chen's office drinking coffee from real china cups, while she spread documents across her mahogany desk. After the police had taken statements and Dr. Cooper had vanished into the night, Jennifer and Daniel had retreated to the guest room presumably to plan their next move. How long has this been building? Margaret asked, adjusting her reading glasses. 8 months officially. Though I think Jennifer's been sizing up my house since the day she met Daniel. I took a sip of coffee. She always had an opinion about how I could better utilize my space. Margaret nodded. The fake psychiatric hold is a sophisticated scam. Dr. Cooper, his real name is Brian Kellerman, by the way, has been running this operation in 3 different states. How does it work? Family member calls claiming an elderly relative is having a breakdown. Kellerman arrives, poses as the person's doctor, convinces police the person needs an emergency psychiatric hold. Once the person is committed, the family has 72 hours to initiate guardianship proceedings. The implications hit me like ice water. They were trying to have me declared incompetent. Exactly. Your daughter-in-law would become your legal guardian with control over your assets, your house, your medical decisions, everything. I thought about Jennifer's confident demeanor yesterday. The way she'd seemed so prepared with her tears and her story about my memory issues. This wasn't spontaneous. She'd been planning this. Margaret pulled out another file. I did some research on Jennifer Walsh last night. Fascinating woman. Before she married your son, she was Jennifer Parker, then Jennifer Martinez, then Jennifer Thompson. 3 marriages, 3 elderly spouses. Her first husband was 72, left her his condo in Florida when he died of a sudden heart attack. Second husband was 68, left her his investment portfolio after a convenient fall down the stairs. Third husband was 75, signed over his assets to her just weeks before he was found dead in his pool. My hands were shaking. And now she's married to my son, who's 42 and completely healthy. But his mother? Margaret let the sentence hang. His mother is 67 with a paid-off house and a substantial retirement account. Bingo. Daniel might not even know what Jennifer is really planning. Some of these women are very skilled at manipulation. I stood up and walked to Margaret's window, looking out at the busy street below, normal people going about their normal lives, completely unaware that predators like Jennifer existed. What do we do? I asked. First, we document everything. I want you to install security cameras in your house today. Record every conversation, every interaction. Second, we contact the other jurisdictions where Jennifer operated. Build a pattern of behavior. And third, Margaret smiled grimly. Third, we give Jennifer Walsh exactly what she deserves. That afternoon, I returned home to find Jennifer in my kitchen making herself a sandwich. She looked up when I entered, her expression carefully neutral. How are you feeling today, Mom? Mom, she'd never called me that before yesterday. I'm feeling quite well, thank you. Although I am curious about something. What's that? She was being so careful, so concerned, the perfect daughter-in-law tending to her confused mother-in-law. I was wondering about your previous marriages. Jennifer's hand froze halfway to the mustard jar. My what? Your previous husbands. I met the most interesting police detective today. He had some fascinating stories about recent widow Jennifer Parker, Jennifer Martinez, and Jennifer Thompson. The color drained from her face. I don't know what you're talking about. Of course you don't. I opened my purse and pulled out the small recording device Margaret had given me. Just like you don't know Dr. Cooper's real name is Brian Kellerman and he's a convicted fraud. Jennifer stared at the device like it was a snake. You can't record me without my permission, actually. In a one-party consent state like ours, I can record any conversation I'm participating in. Especially in my own house. She was backing toward the door now, her mask of concern completely gone. Daniel, my son, appeared from the living room, remote control still in his hand. What's wrong? Your mother is recording us. She's completely paranoid. Daniel looked confused. Mom, why are you recording Jennifer? Because your wife has been married 3 times before you. And all 3 of her previous husbands are dead. The remote control clattered to the floor. Daniel stood frozen in the living room, staring at Jennifer like he'd never seen her before. That's not true, he said finally. But his voice lacked conviction. Show him the documents. Margaret, I said into my phone, which was connected to a conference call with my attorney. Margaret's voice came through the speaker clearly. Daniel, I'm emailing you the death certificates and marriage licenses right now. Your wife was married to Robert Parker in 2018. He died 6 months later. Then to Carlos Martinez in 2019. He died 8 months after the wedding. Then to William Thompson in 2021, dead in for months. Jennifer finally found her voice. Those were coincidences. I can't help it if I attracted older men who had health problems. Older men. I repeated. Robert Parker was 72, Carlos Martinez was 68, William Thompson was 75. And now you're married to my 42-year-old son. That's quite a pattern. Jennifer. Daniel was scrolling through his phone, reading the documents Margaret had sent. His face grew paler with each swipe. Jennifer, he said quietly, you told me you'd only been married once before, to a man who died in a car accident. I didn't want you to think I was unlucky in love, she said, trying to recapture her sweet, vulnerable tone. People judge widows, especially young widows, young. Jennifer was 39 years old and looked every day of it under her carefully applied makeup. What about Dr. Cooper? Daniel asked. The man who was here yesterday claiming to be Mom's psychiatrist. Jennifer's eyes darted between us. I don't know anything about him. The police must have called him. Margaret's voice cut through the speaker. Actually, Jennifer, we have phone records showing 3 calls from your cell phone to Brian Kellerman's number over the past 2 weeks. The longest call was 47 minutes. That's impossible. Would you like me to read you the exact times and durations? Jennifer was backing toward the staircase now. Daniel, you have to believe me. Your mother is trying to turn you against me. Turn him against you? I laughed. Jennifer, you tried to have me committed to a psychiatric facility yesterday. You called a fake doctor to my house and told the police I was having a breakdown. I don't need to turn anyone against you. You're doing a fine job of that yourself. Daniel was staring at his phone screen. Jennifer, this says Robert Parker changed his will 2 weeks before he died. He left everything to you instead of his children. He loved me. His children were horrible to him. And Carlos Martinez signed over power of attorney to you the day before he fell down the stairs. He was getting forgetful. I was helping him manage his affairs. And William Thompson transferred his bank accounts to your name 3 days before he drowned in his pool. Jennifer's voice was getting higher, more desperate. These are all coincidences. You're making it sound like I killed them. The room went silent. She'd said the quiet part out loud. Daniel set his phone down slowly. Jennifer, did you kill those men? Of course not. I loved them. They were good to me. It's not my fault they died, but it is convenient, I said quietly, that they all died right after giving you access to their assets. Margaret's voice came through the phone again. Jennifer, I think you should know that the police departments in Miami, Phoenix, and Portland are very interested in reopening those 3 cases, especially since they've discovered your connection to Brian Kellerman. Jennifer looked trapped, cornered. But I'd learned yesterday that cornered animals are the most dangerous. You know what? She said, her voice suddenly calm. Fine, you want to know the truth? Those old men were pathetic, lonely, desperate, eager to throw money at any woman who paid attention to them. They got exactly what they paid for. Daniel took a step back from her. Jennifer, what are you saying? I'm saying your mother is right. I married old, rich men who died conveniently and left me their money. And yes, I was planning to do the same thing to her. The casual confession hit the room like a bomb. But here's what your precious mother doesn't understand, Jennifer continued, her mask completely off now. I don't need Daniel anymore. I already transferred half her retirement account to my personal account last month. My blood went cold. What? Jennifer smiled for the first time since yesterday. Amazing what you can accomplish with someone's signature. When you bring them their morning coffee every day, a little something in the coffee to make them drowsy, a few documents to sign, and voila, she'd been drugging me. You've been drugging me, I said. The pieces finally clicking into place, the unexplained fatigue I'd been experiencing. The mornings when I'd wake up groggy with no memory of the previous evening. The documents I'd supposedly signed but couldn't remember. Jennifer's smile was cold and satisfied. Just a little something to help you sleep better. You seemed so stressed about having house guests. Daniel was backing away from her now, horror written across his face. Jennifer, you drugged my mother. Oh, don't act so shocked, Danny. You were happy enough to spend the money I transferred from her accounts. That vacation to Cancun, the new gaming equipment, the designer clothes I bought you. Where did you think the money was coming from? I thought you were working. I thought your salon job paid minimum wage plus tips. Really, Daniel? You're even more naive than your mother. Margaret's voice crackled through the phone speaker. Jennifer, I need you to know that this entire conversation is being recorded, and as of 10 minutes ago, the FBI has frozen all bank accounts associated with your social security number. Jennifer's confidence faltered. You can't do that, actually. When someone is suspected of serial elder fraud across multiple states, the federal government can do quite a lot. In fact, Agent Sarah Mitchell should be arriving at the house any moment now, as if on cue. The doorbell rang. Through the window, I could see black SUVs lining my street. You set me up, Jennifer whispered. No, I said, standing up straighter than I had in months. I protected myself. There's a difference. The FBI agents were professional and efficient. Agent Mitchell, a woman about my age with steel gray hair and kind eyes, took Jennifer into custody while reading her rights. The irony wasn't lost on me. Jennifer was hearing the same rights she'd tried to strip away from me. Mrs. Walsh, Agent Mitchell said after Jennifer had been taken away, we're going to need you to come to the field office tomorrow to give a full statement. But I want you to know how brave you were to come forward. I didn't come forward, I said. I was just trying to keep them from kicking me out of my own house. Agent Mitchell smiled. Sometimes the bravest thing we do is simply refuse to be victims. After the agents left, Daniel and I sat in my living room in awkward silence. He looked older, somehow smaller. The man who'd watched his wife insult me in my own kitchen was gone, replaced by someone clearly questioning everything he thought he knew about his life. Mom, he said finally, I didn't know about any of it. I swear to you, I had no idea what Jennifer was doing. I studied his face, searching for the truth. But you knew she was disrespectful to me. You heard her tell me to leave my own house. And you said nothing. He nodded miserably. You're right. I was weak. I was so grateful that someone wanted to be with me after I lost my job. I didn't want to rock the boat, and now I realize I chose a woman who was planning to murder my mother over the son. Who let her get away with it? He looked up at me with tears in his eyes. Can you ever forgive me? I reached over and took his hand. Daniel, you're my son. I love you, but you need to understand that respect isn't optional. Not in my house, not in my life. I understand. And Mom, I'm going to find my own place. You deserve to have your house back. I squeezed his hand. One thing at a time. First, we're going to figure out how much money Jennifer stole and get it back. Then, we're going to make sure she never has the opportunity to hurt another family. What I didn't tell him was that I'd already decided what I was going to do with the money. Once we recovered it, Jennifer Walsh thought she could prey on vulnerable seniors with impunity. She was about to learn how wrong she was. 3 weeks after Jennifer's arrest, I was sitting in Agent Mitchell's office, staring at a number that made my head spin. She stole $347,000 from you over 8 months, Agent Mitchell said, sliding the bank statements across her desk. But here's what's interesting, she only spent about $60,000 of it. Where's the rest? That's what we're trying to figure out. Jennifer was part of a larger operation. We think your case was just one piece of a much bigger puzzle. I leaned back in the uncomfortable government-issued chair. How much bigger? Agent Mitchell pulled out a thick file. We've identified at least 15 other victims across 6 states. All elderly, all targeted the same way. Fake psychiatric holds, fraudulent power of attorney documents, forged signatures. 15 people like me, I said. 15 people who weren't as smart as you, she corrected. Most of them are now in nursing homes, declared incompetent by courts. Their assets controlled by loving family members who are actually part of this network. The scope of it was staggering. Jennifer was working with other people. Jennifer, Brian Kellerman, at least 3 other fake doctors, several corrupt lawyers, and what appears to be a placement coordinator who identifies targets. Placement coordinator? Agent Mitchell opened another file. Someone who works in healthcare or senior services, identifies wealthy elderly people who are isolated or vulnerable and passes their information to the team. I thought about how easily Jennifer had waltzed into my life through Daniel. How did they find me? We're still investigating that. But Mrs. Walsh, we need your help. What kind of help? The other victims can't testify. They've been declared mentally incompetent, or they're too scared, or they've been convinced by their captors that they're actually sick. You're the only victim who fought back successfully. What are you asking me to do? Agent Mitchell leaned forward. Help us catch the rest of them. There's someone at the top of this operation we haven't identified yet, Agent Mitchell said. Someone who's been running the scam for at least 5 years. I thought about those 15 other people trapped in nursing homes. Their families probably told them they were getting the best care. While their life savings disappeared into criminal accounts, what would I need to do? Act as bait? I asked. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Agent Mitchell explained it over coffee in my kitchen 3 days later, with Daniel listening in shocked silence. They would leak information that you'd recovered your stolen money, and were looking to invest it safely. They'd monitor the phones and digital communications of everyone in Jennifer's network, who hasn't been arrested yet. The idea is that someone will approach you with a new investment opportunity or financial service. She said, someone trustworthy, probably recommended by a friend or through your church or community center. And then we see how deep this rabbit hole goes. Daniel shook his head. Mom, this sounds dangerous. What if something goes wrong? I patted his hand. Honey, something already went wrong. Your wife tried to have me committed and steal my life savings. At this point, danger is relative. Agent Mitchell smiled. Mrs. Walsh will be completely protected. We'll have agents nearby at all times and she'll be wearing recording equipment. Plus, we think the approach will be subtle at first. These people are patient. They were right about that. It took exactly 6 days. I was at the grocery store Thursday morning when a woman approached me in the cereal aisle. She was about my age, well-dressed, with the kind of professional appearance that screamed trustworthy. Excuse me, she said with a warm smile. Aren't you Margaret Walsh? I'm Helen Curtis. I think our daughters went to high school together. I didn't recognize her, but I smiled politely. Nice to meet you, Helen. I hate to bother you, but I couldn't help overhearing you talking to the pharmacist about managing your retirement funds. I just went through something similar after my husband passed. My radar immediately went up. I hadn't been talking to the pharmacist about my finances. Oh, yes. And I found the most wonderful financial advisor. He specializes in helping widows protect their assets from family members who might take advantage. There it was, the hook, delivered with perfect timing and false sympathy. That's very kind of you to mention, I said carefully. Helen handed me a business card. His name is Robert Davidson. He's helped so many of us ladies in similar situations. Very discreet, very professional. After she walked away, I immediately texted Agent Mitchell the details. Her response came back quickly. Perfect. We know Robert Davidson. He's been on our radar for months. 2 days later, Robert Davidson called. He had the smoothest voice I'd heard since my high school drama teacher, warm, reassuring, with just a hint of concern that made you want to trust him immediately. Mrs. Walsh, Helen Curtis suggested I reach out to you. She mentioned you might be interested in exploring some secure investment options. I might be, I said, settling into my kitchen chair while Agent Mitchell monitored from the van parked across the street. Though I have to admit, I'm a bit wary these days. I recently had some trouble with someone trying to take advantage of my finances. Oh my. Robert's voice oozed sympathy. Unfortunately, that's far too common. Elder financial abuse is epidemic, particularly from family members who feel entitled to their parents' assets. He was good. Really good. Would you be interested in meeting for coffee? I have an office in downtown Maple Heights. Very comfortable, very private. I specialize in helping seniors protect their wealth from predatory family members. We arranged to meet the following Tuesday at his office. Agent Mitchell briefed me thoroughly beforehand. Robert Davidson is sophisticated, she warned. He's been doing this for at least 3 years. His approach is usually a legitimate-seeming investment that requires signing over temporary power of attorney for processing purposes. And then you disappear into the system. Fake medical emergency, fake psychiatric evaluation, fake diagnosis of incompetence. By the time your real family figures out what happened, your assets are gone and you're in a locked facility somewhere. How many people has he done this to? I asked. We think at least 20. But Mrs. Walsh, this meeting is our chance to get him on tape discussing the scam. Robert Davidson's office was everything you'd expect from a legitimate financial advisor. Expensive furniture, diplomas on the walls, family photos on his desk. If I hadn't known what I was looking for, I would have trusted him completely. Mrs. Walsh, thank you so much for coming in. Helen Curtis spoke very highly of you. He was younger than I'd expected, maybe 55, with silver hair and grandfatherly eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. The kind of man you'd trust to walk your dog or help you change a tire. Helen seems lovely, I said, taking the seat across from his desk. She's one of my success stories, actually, Robert said. When we first met, her stepchildren were trying to have her declared incompetent so they could access her late husband's estate. Now her assets are completely protected. How did you manage that? Robert leaned forward conspiratorially. Between you and me, Margaret, may I call you Margaret? There are legal strategies available to seniors that most people don't know about. Ways to protect your assets that go beyond simple trusts or wills. For example, there's a process where we can temporarily transfer your assets into a protective holding account, while we establish what's called a senior asset shield. It's completely legal, but it has to be done correctly. Temporarily transfer my assets? I asked. Just while the paperwork is processed, he said smoothly. Usually takes about 2 weeks. During that time, your money is completely safe from any family members who might try to claim you're incompetent or unable to manage your affairs. I pretended to consider this. That sounds complicated. Not at all, Robert said. I handle everything. You just sign a few documents giving me temporary authority to move your funds, and I take care of the rest. Helen went through the exact same process. And where exactly are my assets transferred to during this process? Robert's smile never wavered. A secure holding account managed by my firm. Fully insured. Completely safe. You'll get statements showing exactly where every penny is. I see. And what happens if something were to happen to me during those 2 weeks? If I had a medical emergency or something? Well, that's the beauty of the system, he said, leaning back slightly. If you become incapacitated for any reason, the protective hold remains in place until you're able to manage your affairs again. Your family can't touch the money. Predatory relatives can't manipulate you into bad decisions. It's foolproof. I bet it was foolproof for him, Robert. I have to ask. This all sounds almost too good to be true. How do I know this isn't some kind of scam? His expression shifted to one of hurt surprise. Margaret, I understand your concern. After what you've been through with your family situation, of course you're suspicious. But I've been helping seniors protect their assets for over a decade. I can provide references, testimonials, whatever you need to feel comfortable. I'd like to think about it, I said carefully. Of course, he said, then lowered his voice just slightly. But Margaret, I have to tell you, based on what Helen mentioned about your recent troubles, time might be of the essence. If your family is already trying to challenge your competency, every day we wait gives them more opportunity to build a case against you. The perfect pressure tactic, create urgency based on manufactured fear. How quickly could we do this if I decided to move forward? I could have the paperwork ready by tomorrow, Robert said. The whole process could be completed by Friday. For days to steal my life savings and disappear me into the system. I'll call you tomorrow with my decision, I said, standing to leave. As I shook his hand goodbye, Robert Davidson smiled warmly. Margaret, you're doing the right thing by being cautious. It shows you're exactly the kind of intelligent, careful person who deserves to have her assets protected. Walking to my car, I felt sick. This man was so convincing, so professional, so perfectly calibrated to exploit the fears of elderly people who'd already been victimized. But I also felt something else, fury. Agent Mitchell was waiting in my kitchen when I got home from the meeting, along with 2 other agents I hadn't met before. The recording equipment had captured every word of my conversation with Robert Davidson at work. Mrs. Walsh, Agent Mitchell said. Pulling up the audio files on her laptop, he laid out the entire scam in detail. How many people do you think he's done this to? I asked, pouring coffee for everyone. Based on what we'd learned from Jennifer's records, we believed Robert Davidson was the placement coordinator for the entire operation. He identified the targets, gained their trust, got them to sign over power of attorney, then handed them off to the medical team. One of the new agents, a young man who looked like he should still be in college, leaned forward. Mrs. Walsh, we think Davidson has been running this operation for at least 5 years. The money from all the victims gets funneled through his investment firm to accounts in the Cayman Islands. How much money are we talking about? I asked, conservatively. About $12 million, he said. I set my coffee cup down hard. $12 million stolen from elderly people, and that was just the cases we knew about. Agent Mitchell pulled out another file. Mrs. Walsh, we want to move forward with the operation, but you need to understand the risks. If Davidson suspects anything, if we move too fast, he could disappear. We might never catch him. What do you need me to do? Call him tomorrow and agree to the asset protection plan. We'll have agents positioned around his office, recording everything. When he has you sign the power of attorney documents, we'll have enough evidence to arrest him. And what about the people he's already victimized? The ones in nursing homes? Once we arrest Davidson and get access to his records, we can start the process of getting them released and recovering their money. But it's going to take time. Some of them have been trapped in the system for years. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Helen Curtis, who had approached me so smoothly in the grocery store. Was she a victim who'd been turned into a recruiter, or part of the operation from the beginning? And I thought about the 15 people Agent Mitchell had mentioned. 15 seniors right now, probably being told by staff that their families didn't want to see them, that they were too sick to manage their affairs. 15 people who had no idea their life savings had been stolen, while being slowly drugged into compliance. At 3 in the morning, I got up and made a list of questions I wanted to ask Robert Davidson. If I was going to help bring down this operation, I was going to do it right. The next day, I called Davidson's office. Margaret, I was hoping to hear from you. Have you made a decision about the asset protection plan? I have. I'd like to move forward. Wonderful. Can you come in this afternoon? I've already prepared all the necessary documents. Actually, Robert, I was wondering if we could meet somewhere more private. Your office felt a bit formal yesterday. Is there somewhere quieter we could go? There was a pause. Where did you have in mind? What about my house? I'd feel more comfortable reviewing financial documents in my own home. Another pause. Longer this time. I suppose that would be acceptable. Would 3 o'clock work for you? Perfect. After I hung up, I called Agent Mitchell. He's coming to my house this afternoon. Even better, she said. We can wire the entire house for sound and video, Mrs. Walsh, by the end of today. We should have enough evidence to take down the entire network. At 2:45 that afternoon, I sat in my living room watching through the window as Robert Davidson pulled into my driveway. He carried a leather briefcase and looked exactly like what he was pretending to be. A trustworthy financial advisor making a house call to help an elderly client. What he didn't know was that FBI agents were positioned in 3 houses on my street, that my entire house was wired for audio and video, and that the little old lady he was planning to victimize had already figured out his game. I opened the door with my best grateful widow smile. Robert, thank you so much for coming to my house. This feels much more comfortable. Of course, Margaret. I want you to feel completely at ease with this process, he said smoothly. As I led him into my living room, I wondered how many other elderly people had heard those exact words just before signing away their freedom. But today was going to be different. Today, Robert Davidson was going to get a taste of his own medicine. He spread the documents across my coffee table with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd done this many times before. Powers of attorney, asset transfer forms, medical directives, everything needed to steal a life. Now, Margaret, I want you to understand exactly what each of these documents does, Robert said, his voice warm and reassuring. This first one gives me temporary authority to move your assets into the protective holding account. I picked up the power of attorney document and pretended to read it carefully. Robert, this language is quite broad. It says you have authority over all my financial and medical decisions, only temporarily, he said smoothly, and only for your protection. Once the asset shield is in place, the power of attorney becomes inactive. And when exactly does it become inactive? He hesitated for just a moment. Once I determine that your assets are fully protected from any potential threats. I see. And who determines when that is? Well, I do, Robert replied. Based on my professional assessment of your situation, I set the document down. So essentially, you decide when to give me back control of my own money. Robert's smile flickered slightly. Margaret, I understand your concern, but you have to trust the process. This is exactly how we protected Helen Curtis's assets. Speaking of Helen, I'd love to talk to her about her experience. Could you give me her phone number? I'm afraid I can't share client contact information. Confidentiality, you understand. Of course, I said. But surely she wouldn't mind me calling her. After all, she's the one who recommended you. Robert was looking uncomfortable now. Perhaps we could arrange for her to call you after we complete the paperwork. Why not before? Because he stopped, clearly realizing he was painting himself into a corner. Margaret, I sense some hesitation on your part. Is there something specific that's concerning you? I leaned back in my chair and looked at him carefully. This man who made his living destroying elderly people's lives. This predator who had perfected the art of seeming trustworthy while planning betrayal. Robert, I'm curious about something. How did Helen Curtis know I was talking to the pharmacist about my finances? His face went blank. I'm sorry? When she approached me at the grocery store, she said she overheard me discussing retirement funds with the pharmacist. But I never had that conversation. Perhaps you forgot, Robert. I'm 67 years old, not 97. My memory is perfect. So how did Helen know to approach me? The friendly mask was slipping now. Margaret, I think you're overthinking this, am I? Because I'm also curious about something else. You said you've been helping seniors for over a decade, but your business license was only filed 3 years ago. Robert started gathering up the documents. I think perhaps this isn't the right time for you to make these kinds of financial decisions. Actually, I think this is the perfect time. I stood up and walked to my window. Robert, do you see that van parked across the street? He turned to look and I saw his face go pale. That's FBI agent Sarah Mitchell. She's been listening to our entire conversation. Robert was on his feet now, stuffing papers into his briefcase. This is entrapment. No, Robert. Entrapment is what you do to elderly people. This is justice. He was moving toward the door when it opened and Agent Mitchell walked in, followed by 2 other agents. Robert Davidson, you're under arrest for elder fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy to commit kidnapping, as they read him his rights and led him away in handcuffs. Robert looked back at me with pure hatred in his eyes. You have no idea what you've done, he said. This is bigger than you think. Agent Mitchell closed the door behind them and turned to me with a smile. Mrs. Walsh, we couldn't have done this without you. What happens now? I asked. Now we use the information from Davidson's records to locate all the victims and start getting them released. And we follow the money trail to see how high this goes. 2 hours later, Agent Mitchell called me with news that made my blood run cold. Mrs. Walsh, we've been going through Davidson's files. This operation isn't just regional, it's national. And the person at the top. She paused. You're not going to believe this. Who is it? Davidson's been reporting to someone called the coordinator. Based on the communication patterns and financial flows, we think the coordinator has been running similar operations in at least 15 states. How much money? We're estimating over $50 million stolen from elderly victims over the past 8 years. I sat down heavily in my kitchen chair. 50 million? Mrs. Walsh, Agent Mitchell said softly, you didn't just help us catch a small-time scammer. You helped us uncover what might be the largest elder fraud operation in U.S. history. But the biggest shock was still ahead. Agent Mitchell showed up at my house the next morning with news that turned everything I thought I knew about this case upside down. Mrs. Walsh, we've identified the coordinator, she said, setting a thick file on my kitchen table. And you're going to want to sit down for this. I poured coffee, sat down, and braced myself. Who is it? She opened the file and slid a photograph across to me, a professional headshot of a woman in her 50s. Silver hair, perfectly styled, kind eyes staring straight into the camera. I stared at it, confused. I don't understand. Who is this? Dr. Patricia Kellerman. She's been running the entire operation from a senior care consulting firm in Chicago. Kellerman? I blurted out. As in Brian Kellerman, the fake psychiatrist? Her brother, Mitchell confirmed. But here's the part that's going to shock you. Dr. Patricia Kellerman is a real doctor. She's a licensed geriatrician who's been using her position in the medical community to identify and target victims. I studied the photograph again. Something about her face looked familiar, but I couldn't place it. She uses her medical practice to identify elderly patients who are wealthy and isolated. Mitchell continued. Then she refers them to what she calls specialized elder care coordinators. People like Robert Davidson, and her patients trust her, I said slowly. Because she's a real doctor. Exactly. Over the past 8 years, she's built a network of fake financial advisors, corrupt lawyers, and fraudulent medical professionals across 15 states. They've stolen over $50 million and placed more than 200 elderly people in secured facilities against their will. The scope of it was staggering. 200 people. We started making arrests across the country yesterday, Mitchell went on. We've recovered 37 victims so far, and we're working to locate the rest. She pulled another document from the file. Mrs. Walsh, there's something else. We found your name in Dr. Kellerman's files. My blood went cold. What do you mean? You were targeted 18 months ago, long before Jennifer came into your life. She handed me a folder with my name on it. Inside were copies of my medical records, financial statements, property records, even photographs of my house. How did she get all this? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. We're still investigating, Mitchell said. But we think someone in your medical provider's office was feeding information to Dr. Kellerman's network. I thought back to my annual physical 18 months ago, the routine blood work, the screening tests. Had someone in my doctor's office been passing my information to these criminals? Mrs. Walsh, Mitchell said, Jennifer didn't find your family by accident. She was directed to your son, Daniel, specifically because Dr. Kellerman's research showed you were the perfect target. What do you mean, perfect target? Mitchell flipped through the file. Wealthy widow. Adult children who live far away. No close family nearby. Good health but getting older. You checked every box on their victim profile. The realization hit me like a physical blow. Daniel didn't meet Jennifer at a coffee shop. She sought him out, Mitchell said. Jennifer's previous marriages all followed the same pattern. She would research wealthy elderly people, then target their adult children or grandchildren to gain access to the family. I thought about Daniel's whirlwind romance with Jennifer, how quickly they'd moved in together, how eager she'd been to meet me. I'd attributed it to young love. But it had been calculated predation from the very beginning. There's more, Mitchell said gently. Dr. Kellerman has been arrested in Chicago. When we searched her office, we found detailed plans for your case. You were going to be placed in a secured facility in Florida where you would have been kept sedated and isolated while they drained your accounts. For how long? I whispered. Until you died, Mitchell said quietly. Or until the money ran out. The casual brutality of it took my breath away. And my son? What would they have told Daniel? That you were getting the best possible care for your dementia, Mitchell said. And that visits weren't recommended because they agitated you. I stood up and walked to my window, gazing out at the street where I'd lived for 32 years, the neighborhood where I'd raised Daniel, buried my husband, and planned to grow old in peace. Mrs. Walsh, Agent Mitchell said, her voice steady, I want you to know that your actions didn't just save you. Because of what you did, we've been able to rescue dozens of other victims and shut down the largest elder fraud operation we've ever encountered. I turned back to her. What happens to the money they stole? We're working to return as much as possible to the victims. In your case, we've recovered all of your funds, plus interest. And the people who were placed in facilities were working with state authorities to get them released and reunited with their real families. It's going to take time, but we'll get them home that afternoon. I sat in my garden with a cup of tea, reflecting on everything that had happened. 6 months ago, I had been a lonely widow, letting my son and his wife take advantage of my kindness. Today, I was a woman who had helped bring down a criminal empire. My phone rang. It was Daniel. Mom, I just saw the news. Dr. Kellerman's arrest is all over television. I know. I said, they're saying you helped the FBI catch the whole network. I did what needed to be done. There was a long pause. Mom, I'm so proud of you. And I'm so sorry for everything Jennifer put you through. For everything I let her put you through. Daniel, you were a victim too. Jennifer manipulated you just like she tried to manipulate me. But you fought back. You refused to be a victim. I smiled as a cardinal landed on my bird feeder. Sometimes, the most dangerous thing you can do to a predator is refuse to be prey. 6 months later, I received a letter from the Department of Justice thanking me for my role in taking down the Kellerman network. The operation had rescued 187 elderly victims and recovered $42 million in stolen assets. But the real reward came 3 weeks later when a woman named Dorothy Miller called. She had been one of Dr. Kellerman's victims, trapped in a facility in Nevada for 14 months while her assets were drained. Mrs. Walsh, she said, her voice strong and clear, because of what you did, I'm back in my own home with my own family. You gave me my life back. That evening, sitting in my living room, the same room where Jennifer had once tried to convince the police I was having a breakdown, I realized something important. I was no longer the woman who had let her daughter-in-law walk all over her. I wasn't the grieving widow too polite to stand up for herself. I was Margaret Walsh, 67 years old, and I was nobody's victim. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.